Hello, Marcel Mono here, and in this video I'll show you how I did my track, Midnight Train. Let's go through the track and talk through the elements as they come in. Let's start listening. At first, you hear a kick, a top layer that plays from the start, and an atmosphere loop. Let's go through these elements real quick. The kick is a standard kick with nothing special besides heavy compression from H-Comp. Yeah, it sounds like this in single, in solo. Let's disable the compression. A little bit less snap. Now it's more punchy. And yeah. Another thing I did is instead of a bass line, I put this kick through a reverb, rendered the tail, and put it in place as a bass line. I added to this bass. Let's give it a listen. TDR Nova, so it gets sidechained from the kick at the kick peak frequency, so they don't get in each other's way. I also removed a little bit of honk from the 350 340 range. Next element you've heard is the tick-tock element. Just unsolo it. And no, not the tick-tock, it's the top loop. Just a basic percussion shakery loop. I just thinned it out pretty much, pretty heavily with the SSL EQ. I high passed it and low passed it, and added a little bit of metallic reverb to add a washy kind of space, like you're outside of a factory and you hear the machinery inside of it working. Let's remove these both. Sounds a little bit boring. Let's add it back. First the high pass and the EQ, then the reverb. And finally I added one-up pumper, which makes it duck in the 4 to the floor rhythm to add a little bit more of a rhythmic pattern to the loop. What you've also heard is now you've heard it, this little effects transition. And it sounds like this in solo. It's basically a little synth step I found in my sample library, and I high passed it. That's basically it from the EQ department, and added RC20 retro color to make it really wobbly and give it a little bit more distortion. Let's compare it bypassed and not bypassed, with it and without. And last in the chain is the MJUC compressor to make the sound more even and drive it a little bit more. Okay, let's go on. The next element that comes in is the tick-tock loop, which I called it, and it sounds like a clock. That's why I called it this way. Tick, 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 tick. And what I did in the EQ department, I just added a low pass, a high pass filter, like 8 dB on 10K boost, and after this I added a bit of compression from my DBX 160 to make it more snappy. Let's compare it real quick. With compression and without. Just give this a little bit more snap. And here's another instance of my beloved Valhalla Vintage Verb with my new favorite mode of the newest update. It's Chaotic Hall. It's really nice. It's like those wishy-washy modulations, and yeah, you can't go wrong with Valhalla Vintage Verb in my opinion. Yeah. Oh, and you also can hear that the drums get thinned out through a high-pass filter. The high-pass filter you've heard comes from a drum bus. It's basically just an automated high-pass filter on the SSL EQ on the drum bus. So no fancy filter plugin, just an high-pass filter automation. And there were two more elements coming in. The chord element and a little vocal snippet down here. Let's go to the chord element first. It has basically two parts, the attack part, let's solo it, and the tail part. It's basically the same sample, only cut up in attack and tail portion and rendered. And the tail portion gets a little bit of convolution from thrash and a teeny bit of distortion. And it's not much, but I liked it. Let's have a listen. Enable thrash. It just gets a little bit more atmospheric, I think. And together, both get processed a lot. Not a lot. It's just an EQ, a little bit of low pass, high pass, and high frequency boost around 10 dB at what? At 9K, yes. And then it gets really tinny with the API EQ, like a 12 dB boost on 7K and a 9 dB boost on 800 Hz to really thin it out. Let's compare before and after these EQs. Without. Here is too much low end and they don't really pop in context with the other elements. Let's have a listen. Without EQ first and then enable it. Enable. So they fit better with the rest of the track. They also have the chord is also sent to the Valhalla Vintage Verb on my return track. And the next element I'll go over is the little vocal snippet, which you can hear here. It's basically a little breath sample, which gets processed with Isotopes Nectar 2. just a little bit of a gate to get rid of the initial sample tail, an EQ, telephone filter like, low pass, high pass, a little bit of a boost in the in the 1K range to achieve a little bit of this telephone filter effect, delay added and reverb right within the plugin to give it more space, and additionally it gets sent to a spring reverb for effect, and my Valhalla vintage verb on the return track. Yeah, and furthermore, it gets processed by the Buchchild compressor for its sound, which I really like. Yeah. Here you can hear the thinning out from the drums, a little transition effect. The bass comes back in. And the ride that came in, it's basically a basic 909 ride, which gets pitch shifted down with automation. For pitch shifting I used here the Waves pitch shifter. And another thing I did here is to automate the volume of the atmosphere track to bring it into the foreground more, and at the same time the other elements get faded out, at least the drum parts, so they make space for the atmosphere that rises. Let's have a listen. So I think this is the last element that came in. No, not the last. There's another element. It's the step you've heard. It's Iris 2 with a preset I found fitting, and it gets automated throughout its course in the track to add interest and make it less boring. Directly on the MIDI, automated the mod wheel, which is modulates the cutoff in the plug-in. Other than that, I modulated. Iris takes a while to open up. Macros. I automated the reverb. Here you can hear it fading back. Big reverb gets automated down, so it gets more tighter when the drums hit and the bass comes back in. And another element that gets automated is the crunch parameter, I think. Macro 1. Yeah, it's a crunch to add more interest, and later on you can hear macro 7, which is delay, and also the attack to make it more pad-like later on. Let's have a listen to the crunch automation, which comes in here. Scroll down, which comes in here. Solo of the track. on solo. Here you can hear the crunch and the added delay. Another element that is new that plays in the background is the tambourine loop, and it's a sample. And what did I? I high pass, low pass to thin it out, and nothing else on the EQ and compression side here. A little bit of one of my favorite reverbs for this use is TB's Tone Booster's Verb, and it gets this metallic sound I really like. Let's disable it. Oh, I was on the wrong track, excuse me. Here, the tambourine loop. It has no reverb, but it gets thinned out as well. And yeah, a little bit of high frequency removal. And after this, it gets sent to the tape simulation J37 to really crush it a little bit and give it this lo-fi vibe. Let's disable it with the tape simulation. Without. It gets really high and sizzly, which I don't want. To reduce this, I just added this tape simulation, and it also introduces wow and flutter to make it more organic. This is a trick, by the way, I do very often. If I have a percussion element which is too high, too harsh, and EQ doesn't really help, I'll just add a tape simulation like this one, or Tone Booster's Real Bass, or Kramer Master Tape, or the like. And yeah. Okay, this is tambourine. And here again, from this point on, the atmosphere loop takes the front stage, center stage, and comes up front with the delay and the volume automation. And what's happening here is the following. I have Tantra multi-effect plugin on the chord element, and it gets brought in here slowly to change it up a little bit so it sounds not the same like at the start. Let's have a listen. Here is it. Without Tantra. No, it's the same as before. With. And to change up the other melodic element, the step a little bit more, I automated where is it? It's here. I automated macro 5, which is the attack, so it gets more pad-like. Let's have a listen. Just so it gets a little bit more moving out to the end to lead into the outro portion of the track. Now gets stripped down. The high pass filter comes into action from the SSL again on the drum bus. And now it drops back to a basic loop, like at the beginning. Yeah. And this is basically it. At the end, I just add a little bit more high pass to fade out the drums, and yeah. This was a walkthrough through my track Midnight Train. I hope you've learned some workflow tips and tricks and see how I did it so you can apply it to your own tracks. And I hope to see you next time. If you like it, I would appreciate to share this video, like and subscribe, and see you next time. Goodbye. Now I have to find the knob to end the stream. Maybe next time I'll do a tutorial on how I do these tutorials. And